Uh Ken got the smoking a cigar. So, okay, guys, here we go. We're live. Welcome to Paranormal Round Table. I'm not going to do a lot of pleasantries, but prtpodcast.com, Josh Turner at prtpodcast.com. Hit the like button before I get told to do that. Hit the like button and subscribe to YouTube, and we're on 7 different platforms on different podcasts. So we do that on Friday, folks. This show is not going to be a podcast show. This is a live, okay? And I believe we're missing David Weatherly. We had announced David Weatherly. Him and Redfern both busy. We all are busy. This is, I mean, I am. We made time for this, and I appreciate everybody making time for this. October, as you know, is the big month for guys like us. But not only is it big for this, but apparently security decided that it's a big month now for that too. So anyway, without further ado, I want to introduce everybody. Up there in the left-hand corner, that's Barton Nunley. Right below him is Lyle Blackburn, and then right there to his left is the famous Ken Gerhard. So everybody, and not that you, Barton, and Lyle aren't famous, but, Ken is just everywhere, dude. Like, literally, I was at the grocery store, and I saw him on a can of tomato sauce. I was like, is that? Oh, no, that's not him. I thought it was you. I honestly thought it was Ken. True. I was like, and my wife goes, is that Ken Gerhard? But it was. There was a weird little picture of a dude that looked like Ken, but, I said, that isn't Ken. You don't have a. But Lyle does have a hot sauce, and he has a lot of things going on. So anyways, I got a few questions we're going to get into, and I don't want to waste time. The purpose of this show is to discuss Dogman, Bigfoot, metaphysical, physical. Now, there's this big debate in the communities of Bigfoot in particular, but Dogman too. And one of the things that people are constantly asking me is my stance on that. Do I think it's a metaphysical or physical creature? So I want to go around the horn and ask everybody their opinion, but I want to ask a couple questions first. Ken, how long have you been researching?
Well, I've been researching my whole life since I was about 8 or 9 years old, which sounds funny, but I wasn't a normal 8 or 9 year old. But I've been a field researcher for, the better part of 20 years, consistently going out in the field and investigating. And before that, it was kind of off and on for many years. So.
Mm-hmm. And you, Lyle, how long have you been doing it?
About 12 or 13 years in my adult life. But like Ken, I just had an interest in this. So I was sort of an armchair researcher as a young man. And then so for a solid, say, 12 years, I've been active in researching, writing the books and stuff.
Wow. And Barton, what about you?
I've been doing it since 1985. So.
Geez, that's a long time.
Yeah,
wow.
About 35 years.
Awesome.
So on that point, I guess I got you all beat because in my past life, I actually was a Bigfoot. So I didn't have to research myself. I was like, I actually went to a tarot reader and I gave her an extra $50. She told me that. So I trust her judgment. So anyway, I've only been doing this for about, since I was 15. So that's 30 years, but it's just a passing interest until, I got a little older and I started, once I figured out what a Dogman was, because I didn't know what I had seen. I thought it was just a werewolf because I didn't know what a Dogman was. My brother got out of the Army. He lived in Michigan for a long time. He was from there, my half brother, and he said, "What you're talking about is a Dogman." Never heard the term until he said that, and that's how I ended up finding a particular show, and I ended up doing a lot of work on it. And so I did tons and tons of research on Dogman, but Bigfoot would come up. And then sometimes, you get stories that are even weirder and confusing because they'll tell you, I saw a Bigfoot, and then they'll start describing it with a snout, and backward bent the hawk leg, the hawks, like the dog. And you're like, that's not a Bigfoot. And when I tell people that, they're like, huh, because Bigfoot has been around for a long time in the imaginations of people, whereas Dogman hasn't. Dogman became popularized, the Michigan Dogman with Linda and all of her work, and that kind of put it on the map. The Wisconsin, the Beasts of Bray Road, but now, I think it's more common for people to just come out and say what they saw because now Dogman has become more mainstream, just like Bigfoot. Still not as popular. A lot of people still don't know what that is, but we're getting more and more reports of these things. And so what I want to know, and I'll start with you, Ken, is when it comes to Bigfoot / Dogman, either one, where's your stance on it as far as like what do you think it is? And you can start with Bigfoot.
All right. So we're going to delineate the two, which is probably the way I would look at it. But Bigfoot, in the Bigfoot world, I'm what is called an aper, which means that I think that Bigfoot, if it exists, and I'm 90% convinced it exists, and all of its worldwide cousins, the Yeti, Yeren, Yowie, because I think they must all be related because the descriptions are so similar. And again, I can only speak from my experience, Josh, because obviously, all of us here have had different experiences, and that's really, all we can address. But, I've researched Bigfoot all over North America, from Alaska down into Central America. I've worked with most of the leading Bigfoot investigators in the field. And like Lyle said, I've been an armchair reader for decades. And I've interviewed hundreds of eyewitnesses. I've never seen one myself. But based on all of that, I'm convinced that Bigfoot must be some type of relict hominid, basically an ape that walks upright. Otherwise, it's hairy, it's powerfully built. It has other distinct characteristics. But anyways, I view Bigfoot as an unknown species.
Can I ask you a question on that, Ken? You were on my show. You've been on a few times, but one of the times you were on my show, we did a show about prehistoric creatures. And I remember you saying, it might have been off air actually, that there were no apes. There's no fossil record of them in North America. Is that correct?
Correct. There are, we have ancient prosimians, which are primates, but they're even before monkeys. They were like closest to
lemurs.
Lemurs, tarsiers, things like that. Galagos. That was like tens of millions of years ago. I think that was like 50 million years ago. So since that time, no, there have been no hominin fossils found in North America. Now, there is one controversial piece of a skull that was found by a Mexican archaeologist, Federico Solorzano, and it looks like a piece of a Homo erectus skull. Homo erectus was a very widespread hominin that was up to, maybe 40,000 years ago. But that's never been accepted by most scientists. Mm-hmm. So that's controversial. But that would be the only possible evidence of a hominin in North America.
Okay. And staying in the lane of Bigfoot, I'm going to move over to you, Lyle. What do you think it is? As far as Bigfoot, just sticking with Bigfoot for right now.
Right. I mean, like Ken said, all of this is just pure speculation and sort of grounded in the research that I've done. And that includes interviewing hundreds and hundreds of people at this point who have claimed or believe they have seen some kind of creature that fits the description of Bigfoot. Early on, of course, I kind of just naturally gravitated towards it's some kind of an ape, a species of an ape, then you kind of think relic hominid, there's possibilities it's closer to human or closer to what we would consider other great apes, gorillas and what have you. But that was always my thinking. We're looking for a big ape in the woods, and you see the Patterson-Gimlin film, and whether that's real or not, that kind of is the thought behind what we're looking for, the footprints, everything else. In interviewing, hundreds of people and looking into this seriously as an adult, I still don't rule out that that's what it could be. And I kind of stick with that, more of the ground level theory, until I have something that shows that that's not correct and something else is. While at the same time, I certainly understand all the other theories that have been proposed and what we look at now within sort of the umbrella of paranormal, that we've got all these sightings. Not all of them, of course, are solid sightings, but even if you take 10% of those and say, man, those people saw something, we have to explain why they've seen this, and we don't have ultimate evidence, such as, a type specimen, which would be a body. But that's not impossible. Animals, God's creation, Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it, is amazing. Just nature itself. And there could be something that is in very small numbers that exists that has just been a combination of lucky, more intelligent than other, animals, and that thus we haven't been able to prove it. So I still stay on that ground theory, but I'm certainly open-minded and will look at any of this and consider anybody's intelligent discussion on what it might be.
And so moving on to you, Barton, about Bigfoot. What is your theory on this elusive creature?
Well, it's just like my friend Ken said, I can only speak from my own experiences. So speculation and opinion aside, this is not something that I've read in a million books or saw on TV. From my own personal experiences, these things are not apes, not at all. These things have powers that no ape has. So it's easy to dismiss claims like that until you experience it yourself. And I have. I've experienced these things twice in an invisible state. I've seen them twice in a visible state, but I've experienced them twice where I couldn't see them. So if someone could use the Gigantopithecus black eye theory to explain what I've seen and experienced, then I'd be happy to reconsider it. But according to my own experiences, these things are far above and beyond any primate that's ever walked the earth.
Yeah.
And there is no fossil evidence at all of North American apes. Even if there were North American apes, how do you explain the fact that we cannot capture one, kill one, even observe one in their natural habitat? How do you explain that? We can go over to Africa and we can observe primates and apes and gorillas and all these monkeys, whatever, all these natural species. We can actually observe them in their natural habitat, something that we cannot do despite all our advanced technology. We cannot go out and take a picture of Bigfoot unless your name was Roger Patterson.
Yeah,
that's the only guy that's ever done it.
Harlan Ford. You look at the Harlan Ford footage. Dana Holyfield, a friend of all of ours, and I saw the 8mm footage and I watched it over and over and over and over again, and I was just like, this is compelling. I mean, it looks like something's there. However, you get reports that contradict that they are a physical creature, but you also get reports that they're very physical. I mean, that they can,
Sure.
I'm going to throw this out there. On my show not too long ago, I talked about an incident where some women in Washington were driving and a Sasquatch type creature ran across the road and their headlights went right through it. Like, not in the cloaking way. Now, I do believe that there's different things about the cloaking, I'm going to say, but they saw it go across the road and then it kind of faded away, and they were like, what was that? Was that a ghost of a Bigfoot? And I was like, yes, ma'am, I am an expert on that. Yes, that's what that was. And then I moved on. No, because I'm not. And I'm like, you need to talk to some friends of mine. And so she called up Ken, and Ken was like, that was a physical creature. Quit lying, lady. And he hung up on her. That's not what happened, dude. No, seriously. But that is a weird, that's a weird case of this. Now, I had another friend of mine who told me point blank, that it punched a hole through the back of his trailer when he was living in Tyler, Texas, or outside of Tyler, and he said that it punched a hole right through the back of his trailer. That's what he said, and he said it was an absolutely physical creature, and it was tearing up his truck and other things. And I've gotten a report out of Washington I did on my show of a guy who was reading meters for a gas company. This was years ago, back in the 80s. And this thing chased him, and he ran so fast down the hill that he jumped into the back of his truck and over the truck, and that thing just pushed right over his truck. And then it got to the edge of the clearing when he got to the highway, and it just sat there, making noises. Now, that creature that he described, I wanted to get into this because this creature that he described had a short muzzle. When I asked this individual, I said, did it have backward, the bent legs, whatever? He said, no, sir. It didn't have a tail. He goes, it was very ape-like, but it had a kind of a muzzle, not a big snout, but a muzzle, and I'm like, okay, all right. So I said, what you saw was, I don't know, because at that time I didn't. Started working with Ryan Tremblay, and he was always talking about the gugwe. Now, I had heard the gugwe. I didn't really know exactly what that was. I just had reports. And so he told me this thing is a gugwe. Goes back to Algonquin legends of this. I'm talking all the way east to west. They have different names for it. but that it has a short snout. Doesn't have backward bent legs. It has the human-like legs, and it looks distinctly different than your average northwestern Bigfoot. The reports you get up in the Northwest are these large, very ape-like looking creatures, but you go further east and you get, like these stories of like these snouted looking creatures. As somebody said on here earlier, devil monkey. They were talking about the devil monkey. Now I'm going to say something about that real quick. The devil monkey is distinctly different. And I believe, Barton, what we were dealing with in the LBL, that's what I think that was. And I think those are physical. I think that they come from the inner earth. That's my opinion, because it's over the cave system. There's the largest cave system, Mammoth Caves. I mean, it's like anything could live there. And so if there is physical something, they're coming up out of those cave systems doing what they do, and then they're dispersing back into those cave systems. It would be an easy thing to do if you were a Sasquatch. Now, the interesting thing I was going to throw to you, Lyle and Ken, is that Barton actually had, when he was a kid, when you were a child, and we're going to get into this on the show eventually at some point, down the road, but we're not going to get a whole long story about the Spotsville Monster, which is your book you're writing right now, Barton, right? That's correct?
Right.
And now, what happened with that is, can I tell the story? Would you like to tell it in your own words?
No, go right ahead.
Okay. So what it is there were two different types of creatures, but they were working together, and they were terrorizing your family. Just long story short, and it was in Henderson. Was it Henderson, Kentucky?
Right,
Henderson, Kentucky. Yeah. And so there was all this stuff that was going on. Now, when you described the one creature to me, I'm thinking that's Bigfoot. We know, I've heard I know what that is. That's a Bigfoot. When you told me the other creature, I said, hey, whoa, hold on. It's not a Dogman, by the definition. It's not what I saw when I was 15, but it is, it is something that's distinctly different than a Sasquatch. It doesn't look like a Sasquatch the way you described it. It's had a snout, but it didn't have pointy ears, like the ears on top. That's the most important thing to me, is that the ears are up there. Now, when you described it having a snout with no ears, like pointed up, I'm thinking, what, it's a gugwe. Now, I have my own theories about that too. Now, Ken and Lyle and Barton, you can tell me what you think about this gugwe creature that we're starting to hear more and more about. Could it be a chimeric crossbreeding between a physical Dogman and a physical Bigfoot? Is it some sort of like spiritual creature, or is it interdimensional, metaphysical? I have no idea, but people are seeing them more and more, and they're highly aggressive. I had a woman that was leaving a Christmas party, and she said, her daughter-in-law got her to talk to me, and she said this thing punched. It absolutely was like a Bigfoot with a short muzzle, and put its arm right through her window, and you get those reports of these violent encounters. Oftentimes they do involve this kind of creature. So I don't know what we're dealing with that, but the theories abound. It's government project. It's, who knows what it is. They released it, it was some sort of crossbreeding. But you, Barton, claim to have seen one of each in the same area. Now, that's
right.
And it's extremely rare to get them in the same area too.
Right, but the Spotsville Monster creatures were the ones that we saw, my family actually saw, were more of the traditional Bigfoot descriptive, like the ape-man hybrid type. But the one who saved us from all that stuff before we finally had to move out because of it, there was a neighbor down the road, and he actually saw these creatures up close, and I sat in his living room in 2005 and sketched out this creature that he'd seen, and I didn't have any clue that there were two types of creatures there until that day, and I realized that he wasn't describing a Bigfoot, and so what we had was a Bigfoot type creature. After the sketch was finished, a Bigfoot type creature with long fangs and talons and red eyes, and it was shortened muzzle, shortened muzzle, he called it. And so I was really kind of blown away that there might be two different type creatures there. So we certainly didn't see that type at all, but the neighbor down the road seen it several times and was able to describe it for me. And Yeah, he had a lot of crazy, bizarre experiences after we finally moved out of that place in 1975 that he told me about, and which further strengthened my conclusion that these things are not purely physical. So they're physical enough to kill every one of our animals, every one of our domestic livestock, but non-physical enough to walk across a muddy field and not leave a single footprint. So explain that to me using the relic hominid theory, and I'd be happy to listen. But explain that and make some sense of how they could do that. I just can't see any way that would be possible.
I'm going to say something really quick there, and then I'm going to ask you, Ken, and then we'll go to Lyle. The cloaking thing. Now, I've heard arguments on both sides. Here's what I had the other day. Someone said the fact that they can go invisible means that they are actually metaphysical, and that because this one went invisible. I explained to this individual, I told her, I said, let me tell you something. There are people who have seen these things, like with their fur, it changes in the sunlight or it changes in the moonlight, and these are Bigfoot type creatures using cloaking, but it's based on their hair, on the fibers of their hair. I had somebody tell me that they were going to send me some hair, whatever, and they said they could get it, and that when they held it up to the certain light, that it would show that it could change. So that's still a physical thing. I never got the hair, by the way. But yeah, and I also was supposed to be given a werewolf tooth, but I'm still waiting on that. I'm holding my breath. But anyways, thanks a lot, Dad. No, I'm just kidding. Seriously. So what I was thinking was there are two different ways to look at that. Now, another guy said they're absolutely that's the hair filament fibers, blah 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 blah. And I said, well, consider this. I had a guy that was a hunter. Okay, and I did it on my show. I think Anthony called it the Shimmering Phantom or something like that. Not crazy about the title, but it is what it is. That it climbed up into a tree, went and sat right next to him, and it was a predator-looking type of, how when it does the cloaking, and he saw it, and it was a gigantic creature. It had to be a Sasquatch of some kind, but it was moving around, and he could see it kind of, like blurred, but it was blending in. Physical or not physical, there's no way to know unless you reach over and grab and say, hey, are you, and he was terrified. So he just sat there looking at it, and just and stunned. Now, here's the thing. What do you guys think about that, and what Barton said about them being completely metaphysical because of what he's seen, and then your ideas on the cloaking? I'll start with you, Ken.
Wow, I'm trying to take notes here. We're covering so much ground already, but I want to clarify one thing since Barton was gracious enough to talk about his experiences. Even though I am a traditional old school cryptozoologist, I'm also totally open-minded to the paranormal, i.e. the metaphysical or whatever you want to call it. I've experienced some minor things. I know many people that have. I've written a book about Mothman type creatures, and I don't know why this never gets wrapped up in the Dogman situation, but it's very similar phenomenon because it's, winged humanoid creatures, which is just as weird as a Dogman. So I am open-minded to. So yeah, thanks. So I am open-minded to the metaphysical stuff. Okay. So I'm not just everything is flesh and blood. Okay. So that's the first thing I want to say. The next thing I wanted to point to was interpretation and perspective. And for example, there's a common misconception or misrepresentation by some people, not Barton, but other people that are espousing this paranormal theory for Bigfoot will say, well, every Native American tribe used them as spirits, which is a misrepresentation based on my experience. I've spoken to Native American people from Alaska, Inuit, to Lakota, to the Maya in Central America. Every culture has some view it as kind of having these abilities, but some don't. Some just view it as like another tribe of hairy humans that lives like deep in the wilderness. So that's kind of an interesting example of how a lot of this is going to be based on our own personal biases that are based on our experiences and belief systems and just kind of the way we look at life. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. And I don't want to go on too much with this on that line of thinking, because that could be a whole nother conference call for it.
Yeah, we could do another show on that, but go ahead, Ken.
But what I can say is, just in terms of the physical Bigfoot, what I can tell you is there are well over 6,000 well-documented accounts And 99.9% of those describe perfectly natural, not cloaking, not, Bigfoot vanishing or going through a portal, but Bigfoot stepping across the road. That's the most common people see at night. Bigfoot drinking water, Bigfoot peeking up behind a tree, Bigfoot standing in the woods. So, I mean, that's like the best. So we can certainly concentrate on the weirder stories, which is what a lot of people want to do because they're fun. It's Bigfoot gets even weirder and wilder. But and also Bigfoot looks exactly like these ancient hominins that lived 2 million to 1 million years ago. I'm not a Gigantopithecus advocate anymore. I think more like a paranthropine, like a robust Australopithecus from Africa. But they basically look just like Bigfoot. So we know things that look like Bigfoot were in the fossil history. We know there's a tradition of things like Bigfoot all over the world in different cultures. And the vast majority of eyewitness sightings describe something that looks like a natural and behaves like a natural animal. And so I think you can make a case for the physical flesh and blood Bigfoot. And so before I kick it over to Lyle, I'll say, could we be dealing with two different types of phenomenon that both look like Bigfoot? Mm-hmm. And I'll pass it on to you, Lyle.
Yep.
So what Ken said, but the way I look at things like Barton, and I'm already, friends with Barton and know about his case. Those are the ones that, as to why I say there's got to be some other, you've got to entertain other things, because you have very credible people like this that have had experiences that if I wasn't there, I can't, he's the expert on that. That can be an expert because he was there, mm-hmm. So that trumps any speculation or whatever I want Bigfoot to be. And like Ken, I'm just going by what is the vast majority of what has been presented to me in my, spectrum. And I think, and I'm thinking about this, I think also there is a skew in the data, because when you have a show called Paranormal Round Table, somebody who has an experience that is sort of weird and can't quite be explained, they will probably report it to that, to something like that. Whereas I think I just don't get a lot of that. I just get like hunters saying, I saw this thing creep through, it mm-hmm. went here, it crossed the road, or, I've studied old cases, I probably interviewed 120 people that had really solid sightings of the Fouke Monster, the Legend of Boggy Creek case. Only once did somebody say that there was something weird to that. All the others are just simply, so I just kind of look at that data, but I'm probably skewed because I'm getting reports where people go, I saw something, in these areas, I'm a hunter or whatever, and I want to, talk to Lyle about it. So, I may not be in the periphery other than reading books, and certainly I've read Linda Godfrey books and other ones where you do have these cases you can't quite explain. They're not traditional Bigfoot. They look Bigfoot, but they're doing other things. And if we believe those witnesses to be credible, which is really the hinge point here, is, people tell a lot of stories, but what evidence is there, and there's the conundrum, because, well, I can't get evidence because they're they disappear, they're cloaking, they're camouflaging, they jump through a portal, or it's just an amazing creature that just was there 1 second and it was in the woods. So that's no real answer, but I think I defer also to that. There are things in the fossil record that look so much like Bigfoot. And Bigfoot, when you get a report, they a lot of times say, man, it looks so ape-like. Its arms were below its knees. It was hairy. It looked like a scary ape. Or they would say, Hunter, why didn't you shoot it? He said, it just looked too human. I couldn't live with myself. Mm-hmm. So I see the descriptions as being so much of a terrestrial nature and matching so much of what that exists here already and what has existed on the planet, that it's then seems to fit with that. If it was, we start talking about aliens and things that just seem, it's got 4 arms, it's green, it's got, slimy eyes or whatever, it's easier to say, okay, those things are coming from somewhere else, or in, in a dimension we're not aware of. So I guess my answer to that is I just look at the data I'm given and kind of operate on a hypothesis based on that, while at the same time open to pulling in more of those accounts and experiences like Barton, to where I'm like, how are we going to figure that out?
Mm-hmm.
Why is Bigfoot covered in hair? If it's an interdimensional being, hair is a mammalian feature that is used to thermoregulate body temperature. So I forgot to add that. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll throw
this
out there.
The interdimensional being need to be covered in hair, I guess is what I'm
exactly.
asking.
But I'll say this: the story of the Skinwalker Ranch started off with a wolf that was shot 3 times, no blood, and then all this wackiness ensues. Of course, not wackiness. I'm not trivializing what they've done, but I mean, it was all kinds of crazy stuff that went on. You also get stories of Bigfoot being shot. Now, the guy up in Tyler, he's since moved, but he said that he shot it once or twice, nothing, no blood, no nothing. He said it was completely physical. It was doing damage. It, did damage to his trailer, This was back in 1997. But he said it did damage to his trailer, and it, did all kinds of stuff, tore up his truck. But when he shot it, there was no blood. Now, here's a question I had that I had actually wanted to know from what your perspectives were, all 3 of you guys, and we'll go around the horn here. I got a report of a Dogman climbing up a tree. Okay, and I don't want to get too far into it because it's pretty scary, and I was going to talk about it on my Halloween show, but gets shot. Flesh flying off of its shoulder, and this guy that shot it, like, he was absolutely on a piece of property that was actually once owned by my dad's family's relatives, which that area we've gotten all kinds of weird stories. My dad's family on that side called them boogers. They said that, and they'd hide behind trees and blah, 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 and all these legends about the Comanches, and whatever, that they would fight the Comanches and that they were giants and whatever. This thing didn't look anything like a Bigfoot. It was a Dogman, absolutely Dogman. When he started describing it, he goes, "What is that?" I said, "That's a Dogman. It had to be." Hair and fur flying off of its shoulder. No blood. Hit it with a 22-250. That's a heavy. That'll knock you down. That'll hit you good. So when you look at a situation like that, it dropped down to the bottom of the tree, shook itself off, debated about coming back. He hit it in the head, shot it point blank. Okay, this is a 65-year-old person. Okay, I don't think he's making up stories about this. I really don't. I think he shot it and it just took off. Now, Ken and me, we got in trouble on Facebook. Not in trouble, but there was a thread where Ken had said that he didn't believe that Dogman was a physical creature. He thought it was metaphysical. You remember that, Ken? And then that touched off an entire tirade of people, and people getting angry, but I'm in the camp of Ken with that, because I do believe that what we're dealing with when it comes to Dogman has to be something, at least, mostly metaphysical, because the reports you get just don't make sense. The things that this thing can do. I covered a case called the Serbian Werewolf, which was just so bizarre. And me and my brother were on Skype, and we were talking to these people, and they were telling us about this thing that came out of a hole. I'm not talking about a hole out of the ground. I'm talking on the staircase, and it was physically grabbing and pulling on this woman who it probably scarred her for life. And she got away, but it was trying to pull her into this hole as she thought it was what it was doing. And there were cases, and in that particular case too, forced exit, not forced entry. Now, I had another friend of mine that told me he studied a Bigfoot case, and this was given to me by the late Armando Salazar. He was my first co-host, very, very nice guy. But he had a friend that was out in Conroe, and we went out there. He fully believed that this thing it materialized in his house. Okay, basically destroyed part of his house exiting. Now, he said this thing was running around on his property. We didn't see it. We went out looking. We didn't see it. But he fully believed that that's what had happened. And when he told us that it materialized in his house and that it attacked him. Not like beating him, whatever, but like, grabbed him, and he got away from it, and it just destroyed that, When it appeared, he said it almost looked like it was confused. Okay. Now, you get these weird stories. I have a really important question. If these stories are to be believed, that puts at least there is a metaphysical being that can do this. Now, the Native American legends say, like Ken said, they say it both ways. They'll call them like the big hairy tribe or men or whatever, and then they'll also talk about them having special abilities. But the Native Americans also ascribe special abilities to ravens and crows and all kinds of other things, which you could say, oh, every time you see an owl, as a Latino, I say, oh, there's a lechuza. Hey, I used to scare the heck out of my nephews. Every time I saw a bird, and look at a lechuza. Hey, look, mira. And then they're scared to death, and the rest of the day they behave, because if you don't, what you saw earlier, hey, the patarica is going to come, it's going to get you. So you're sitting there going like, this is, what are we dealing with? I mean, if obviously, there are people that are reporting Bigfoot. It absolutely looks like a Bigfoot. People reporting Dogman, absolutely look like werewolf-looking creature. Some of them now do bleed. You get reports of people. I shot it and I followed it. It bled down into a creek and it was gone. Got that with Bigfoot and Dogman. I could go on all day. I got tons of encounters, and most of the people that I've actually gotten to meet with and sit with, face to face and talk to them, they seem to be credible. But I have a question, and I'll start with Barton on this one. If these things, I mean, not Barton, I guess, because you're a more metaphysical, but I guess we'll go with Lyle on this one. What's their hibernation pattern? What's their migration pattern? Do they have one? Are they 24/7? Because I have noticed in my, what I've noticed is with the Dogman in particular, between the months of October and December, we get a huge spike in Dogman reports, and in particular in December. I don't know why that is, but I noticed it. I have OCD too, and when I was looking at the numbers, I was like, this is weird. So I showed my team, and I said, look at this. Look at these numbers. December 24th, December 19th, December 12th, December 13th. You get all and you're going like, why are there so many in that month? Why is there an uptick in the fall and then going into the winter months? I know what my theory is. It's probably because there's less foliage and you can see them. That could be. Now you get hundreds of reports. You're just driving by and, what is that, honey? Oh, was that a Bigfoot? I just saw a Bigfoot standing on the side of the road. Got a report outside of Giddings, Texas. And so you're going like, that's, you get a million of those, and those don't make it, because they're just a short, quick sighting. But I'm talking like the stuff that goes on in December, things being, like chasing people's cars and them throwing rocks and interacting with us in a physical way. Do these things hibernate? Do you have an opinion or belief about that, Lyle?
Hibernation, to me, would classify it as a physical being. I mean, right there, just the fact if it's moving through dimensions or as a supernatural creature, I wouldn't think it would care anything about when it popped up, because it would be basically impervious to the elements or seasons or anything else. And that doesn't mean I'm saying Dogman is a physical, because I think if we accept that people do indeed see these dogmen, then that's a whole nother thing. You just have to entertain the possibility that those things are not terrestrial creatures or things that we fully understand. They're, could be coming from somewhere else. You have to entertain a whole lot of other theories about that. But, as far as, establishing a pattern of sightings, and that certainly happens with Bigfoot, and you can kind of speculate as to why, because, the hotter months, or again, when people are most in the woods, there's hunting seasons where you've got a lot of people more active in the woods, or does that push them away because there are people in the woods? You can look at patterns of human activity, and certainly, like you said, the foliage is going to play a huge difference in something that's lurking in the woods, whether you can see it or not. Mm-hmm. So to me, like speculating about things like, hibernation patterns, I think we're still just at a level where we're just trying to say, what are these things? Do they truly exist? And, let's look at those patterns of just where people see them and what conditions we're seeing them to decide if they're out there.
Somebody just said the answer. They said Dogman is festive. Just said that on. They said that in the comments. Gene, I believe you. I believe Dogman says, it's Halloween time. Time to go scare the crap out of a 15-year-old kid from Taylor and, make him be on a show 30 years later with 3 other guys. Anyways, moving on. Ken, what is your opinion on what to add to or to what Lyle said?
Well, I would just want to make 2 points as we're kind of starting to intermingle the Bigfoot and Dogman stuff. The first is that, again, just based on my experiences, the evidence that I've seen, the data that I've collected, because I have also interviewed Dogman witnesses and looked into some of those cases, Bray Road and Defiance and stuff like that. In Texas, some kind of Dogman werewolf cases. So I want to delineate those 2 things. I think there's a tendency for some people to want to connect those 2 phenomenon for some reason. Maybe it's because they're both out in the woods and they're hairy and they're man-like. So I think they are 2 separate phenomenon. Mm-hmm. And I also want to now make the case why I think that Dogman is a metaphysical creature. And again, I would like to throw in things like Mothman and a lot of other chimeric half man, half animal type creatures, because I think those surely all have to be the same phenomenon or connected somehow.
Well, let's stick to
just because one looks like a dog and one looks like a human with wings, but the way that they behave.
We're going to stick to the topic, Ken. Quit getting off track here. Go ahead. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. If you believe that they're all the same.
I'm just saying, okay, this is why they're metaphysical. You already talked about a lot of the weirdness. I've interviewed many flying humanoid witnesses and some Dogman witnesses. Hyper-aggressive behavior. That's not natural for any animal. Bigfoot is more of a passive, territorial, aggressive, but these things are like always chasing cars, clawing at people, scaring the living beep out of people. And, that's just not a natural animal behavior. And also, of course, the physical description. Whereas Bigfoot has a strong fossil record in terms of things that look like Bigfoot, starting out like millions of years ago up to maybe like a million years ago, 50,000 years ago. Yeah, well, not just that. There's a whole, I don't want to go into the whole paleoanthropology, but there's Dogman. It cannot exist from an evolutionary standpoint, okay? Humans and canids, dogs, last shared a common ancestor 80 million years ago. It was called a Boreoeutherian, and dogs went this way and humans went that way. Mm-hmm. And so genetically, there's no reason that those 2 things would ever intermingle to create. And I know like people like to speculate about like secret labs where genetic stuff is being done. Yeah. Who knows, man? I don't advocate that, but anything's possible, right? But, and so Dogman seems to be related also to people that have a history of paranormal experiences in their life. Because I've met experiencers and people that have seen Dogman, but they've also had all kinds of crazy paranormal weird stuff. And it often starts out with, I lived in a haunted house when I was a kid, and that's when I started experiencing things. Mm-hmm. So
bingo.
Maybe those types of people are more tuned into the frequency of whatever this paranormal stuff is, and it just attaches to them. And so throughout the course of their life, they see these different and experience these different things. And some of those things may manifest in a form that looks like a werewolf or a Dogman, which is pretty darn scary.
Yeah. And Barton, we talked about that in Humanoids. I covered a case where it was friends of mine, and she's since passed on, but her brother and me are very good. Her brothers, I should say, they were telling me about the phenomena. It was in a house in Waco, and there was what really got me about your book in Humanoids, Barton, when I first contacted you, and you blew me off. You're like, "Who's this guy? Get out of here!" Nah, I'm just kidding. You were very gracious. You all were very, very nice. And when you didn't know who I was, Barton's like, "Is this the country singer?" And I was like, "Yes, it is." And I tricked him that way.
Yeah, I love your song.
Then he started giving me all kinds of information. Then he's like, "You're some kind of fat-looking guy. That you're lying to me." But we became friends anyway. So he had the Inhumanoids book, and he was talking about this werewolf-looking creature. When the kid was hiding under the bed, they were playing hide and seek. This thing that looks like the big bad wolf comes in there. Now, if you take that case by itself, you think, this is crazy. This is a little kid that, he's seeing things, But then this friend of mine, she tells me about this phenomena, this haunting that's going on in her house. Well, at one point, there was a werewolf-looking creature dressed like a clown. So me and Barton went over this the other night. Barton, remember Friday night we talked about
Sure.
this, and we went over the case, and we were like, "What is that? I mean, what is that? Like, why would if it was a werewolf-looking creature, that was its true appearance, then I could see trying to pretend like you're a clown. But why would it look like a werewolf clown?" And these two kids both told me that's what we saw. And then I had this wolf-looking thing that flattened itself and climbed up and went into the wall. It was crazy. But it was a lot of phenomena going on. But Ken, I'll tell you this too. I've covered cases where people claim to see Bigfoot, and they have weird phenomena going on around them too. Woman claims that she was out by her trash cans and that there were two Sasquatch-looking creatures out in Old County Road, out in the country, and that they were digging through their trash. Well, she also claimed to have had ghost activity going on in her house. So could they have come from somewhere, the same place, or was it just a coincidence? Our colleague, Linda Godfrey, she told me one of the things she believes is that when Bigfoot, she said Bigfoot and Dogman, because she's gotten both reports, that Bigfoot and Dogman, when they come to our dimension or our world through their wherever, that the longer they're here, the more physical they become, and that they have to eat and sleep and do all the things that a physical creature has to do. So what do you think of that? I'll start with you, Barton, on that one.
Well, I think the fact that a werewolf appeared to a couple of kids dressed as a clown is a great indicator that it's not a normal flesh and blood animal. So,
yeah, that's not normal.
It's not normal for a werewolf.
That was an easy one there.
Crazy.
We figured it out. We've solved the case.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, folks. Thanks for tuning in.
So I think these things, and amazingly, I'm right in line with Ken on this, because I believe these things can appear to whichever witness it chooses, and it can take the form, whatever form which best serves its purpose, which is to conceivably cause a paradigm shift in the witness, to get the witness to believe a certain way or a certain thing. So the werewolf dressed as a clown, and maybe that was the best form that it could appear to these children, and to get them to not scream or whatever. And so these things can take any shape that they choose. So whether it's a dog man or a Bigfoot, it doesn't really matter, or a werewolf clown, whatever form is the best to cause a certain change in the way one thinks is why I think that they do that and they appear that way.
And Lyle, your theories about the Dogman, like I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that. Like, if you do you believe that it's completely a metaphysical creature as opposed to a physical creature? Just strictly the Dogman. I mean, if you took the Bigfoot out of the equation, let's start with that.
Yes, I would speculate to say that just based on, like Ken said, the combination of a canid and a human are just, far more hard to accept than what we see as Bigfoot. So yes, I think that if we accept the Dogman as being something real, a phenomenon, people are seeing something, then it has, the only way to explain that really in terms of what is being described by now a lot of witnesses, early on, back when, I looked into old cases like the Lawton werewolf and Viter werewolf and Converse werewolf, all these kind of classic cases, you didn't, it's almost like, you didn't have enough, but now we've got so many Dogman sightings that you've got to say, this just doesn't fit the natural world, in my opinion. So therefore you've got to speculate that it's metaphysical, supernatural, crossing dimensions, however you want to explain it, which is impossible because we're just speculating. But yes, I would say Dogman to me is a more in the metaphysical creature zone than something like a Bigfoot.
Yeah, and I got into it with a couple people. I've gotten into it with them, and here's what happened to me. when I saw what I saw, and I'm going to get into what I saw. I've told the story. I told it on Paul Sinclair's show just the other day. Here's what happened. I saw something that for 29 years I thought was a physical creature. Then my brother's friend tells me in December 2019 that there was a black vapor coming off of its back. I didn't see that. I saw it manipulate the fence. I saw it move and do everything that a physical creature would do. But when he told me that there was a black vapor coming off of its back and back of its neck, and Anthony was with me, and I was stunned. I was like, you never told me this. He's like, you never asked. And I thought about it, and I was like, I think he's probably the only one in the family that saw it that I didn't go, hey, what exactly did you see? Because I just assumed that when it walked by the window, everybody saw the same thing. But he's the only one that claims to have seen that sort of metaphysical phenomena. I do believe, and I strongly believe this, that there are two different types. This is just my personal belief. I believe there are two different things going on with Bigfoot. Now, I'm going to throw this out there for all y'all, and you can postulate on it. I was told by a Ute, he's a Ute native, it was a friend of mine. I met his grandfather, who was a medicine man, or came from a line of medicine men. He told me that the skinwalker, which they think is an evil thing because it comes from the Navajo, which they had put a curse on the Utes. They had been at war, but they had their own version of a skinwalker. Okay, but he said that these people they are able to shift into any animal on this earth. And so I said, can they shift into a Bigfoot? He said, absolutely. I said, well, what if, Bigfoot, is it an animal? He says there is a Bigfoot that is a type of animal. That's what he said. Okay, and I'm saying I believe that. I'm not giving my but he said but there are these fakes, or whatever you want to call them, these skinwalkers that can imitate or emulate the Sasquatch, or they can imitate a werewolf, a werewolf-like creature. And I said, whoa. I said, hold on. This is the linchpin to that. Like the crux of it is, how are they able to imitate a werewolf-looking creature unless that werewolf-looking creature exists as a flesh and blood creature? It would just be them trying to emulate a wolf and looking like a deformed wolf, right? He said, no. There is an actual creature that exists, okay, that lives in the woods. Supposedly, according to him, it's a shy animal. That's what his people want to believe. That's fine. But it does have like a human-like characteristic to it. It can stand up on its hind legs, but it doesn't have this upper body of a werewolf type thing. So when the skinwalker, or I believe they call them the Wendalushi, unless I'm mistaken, they take that form of that creature, okay? It does look like a werewolf because they still have the upper body of a man and the backward bent legs of whatever, and it does take on a sort of metaphysical ability. But he said that they could imitate a Sasquatch, which would connotate that the Sasquatch is actually a real thing, but so is Dogman, because they're imitating it, right? Now, I know you guys are all familiar with J.C. Johnson. I heard J.C. Johnson speak one time, and he said very similar thing, that there were people that could shapeshift into these creatures, okay, and then they get, this is him, not me, I'm just, don't kill the messenger, but J.C. said, and I agreed with him to an extent because, it was plausible. They had figured out a way to manipulate, whatever, and they could become a werewolf-like type creature. But then they get stuck like that because there's no guarantees you're going to be able to shift back. Now, Linda said that after a certain period of time, they have to go back to where they came from. I'm postulating on the theory that they're from the fourth dimension. If you're from, if you're a two-dimensional character, I've said this before, and in a three-dimensional, we're in the third dimension. We can see everything on this piece of paper. If you were a being from this piece of paper, you would have no concept of us at all. You'd be like ants on the side of a highway. You don't even know there's a highway. You even know there's people, much less a highway that they're driving on 90 miles an hour. It's just inconceivable. So, but as third-dimensional beings, if something came out of the fourth dimension, okay, and if you're going by Michikaku, who says that there are, multiple, the string theory and all that, I do kind of believe that. Something from a fourth dimension coming into our dimension is going to look absolutely, it's like, what the heck is this? What if these creatures are just as flesh and blood as we are, but they're actually just coming from another dimension? I mean, I know that sounds crazy to the uninitiated, but when you've covered so many cases, now, of course, Lyle and Ken and even Barton, you're going to get cases that are going to be unlike what I get. Like you said, Lyle, I have a show called Paranormal Round Table. Well, people are going to go, okay, you're going to get more cases that are going to be a little more, different, because people are going to be like, this guy's not going to think I'm crazy. If I had a show called Flesh and Blood Bigfoot Round Table, people are going to go, okay, I'm going to take my story as a hunter and what I saw, a Sasquatch walking across a creek with looked like a youngster, I'm going to take it to him because that's what he's about. But when you have a show that's actually called Paranormal Round Table, and paranormal, the word paranormal has this, I call it a stigma attached to it, that it's all about ghosts and stuff like that, but that's not the case. To me, paranormal is anything that's beyond the norm. If I see a Bigfoot and I'm driving down the road, that's not normal. To me, anyway. I'm going to be like, what? I've never seen a Bigfoot. My wife claims we did. I don't claim it because I didn't get the look at it like she did. She got a good look at the side profile, and so she said that's what it was, whatever. That's hers. I don't claim it, but I don't think she was lying either, because there was something very weird going on. All the cattle were just huddled into one corner, and I said, why would there be one cow over there by itself? And so I thought it might have been a cow, but I don't think it was. I don't think it was cattle. I think it was something there. But you're going to get these reports that are leaning toward metaphysical, but I also get lots and lots and lots of physical reports too. So I mean, is it possible? I mean, is it just possible in your mind? And I know Barton, you know this, or you believe this, but for Ken, do you believe that could be a plausible theory? I mean, it's scientific in its base. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to. Thank you for those stories that you shared. I mean, I'm not, saying they weren't incredible, because certainly we should listen to, particularly the Native Americans. They've been here a lot longer than the Anglos, so they know what's going on on this continent much better than we do. But again, you could speak to hundreds of Native Americans, or even different tribes and cultures, and probably get completely differing perspectives of what. So, I mean, we can always cherry pick one account and say, this guy told me this, but that's just one out of hundreds or thousands. So that's why it's important, I think, to always kind of look at the broad picture and not any of us to get too kind of drawn in and focused on one particular account or a few accounts that fit a certain belief system we have. So that's the first thing I wanted to put out there. But your theory, it makes sense to me as far as what I know about quantum physics, which is nothing. So I'm just going to say that I'm open-minded, but I like to look at it in a kind of a different way, which might kind of piss everybody off. But basically, there are things that we are just not capable of understanding at this point. And there's nothing wrong or shameful or humiliating to say we don't understand. There are phenomenon in our universe, in our world, in our reality that are happening around us that we are not yet capable mentally of grasping and conceiving what they are. So we can speculate about it and say, well, it could be, it could be from another dimension. I mean, that's, I guess people could make a case for that, but So, I mean, I guess I would just leave your listeners with this, which is, at any point, a half human, half animal creature can appear in your reality and terrorize you. Mm-hmm. So
I think
happy Halloween.
I mean, my opinion is that every single person being snatched up is probably being taken by Bigfoot. Your turn, Lyle. What do you think?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean,
sound theory.
And very sound theory. Well, that therein you have another tangent, disappearances and all this, do we attribute those to people just being lost, or, or are these creatures taking them? I mean, just so much speculation, and you can go down these rabbit holes with any of these topics, and it's fun. I think that's we don't have one here to examine, but it's fun to do a roundtable like this where we can kind of like, oh yeah, it's never thought of it that way, and just to try to grasp what it is. But to me, and what I mostly do in my sort of investigative journalism monster hunting thing is is to say there is a phenomenon going on here. This is not hallucinations. We cannot dismiss this as people making up stories or any of that. And again, even if you just boiled it down to the top 20 most credible ones that we could find, bottom line is there's a phenomenon going on in all of these creature cases that we're grappling to explain. But no matter what mainstream science says or does or laughs, you can't deny that there is something going on here. And the question is always not, did they experience something or see something? It's just, what did they see and how did they see it? And I'll go along with what Bart kind of said, is I've come to believe that there are people who I think are more in tune or whether it's good fortune or bad fortune in their opinions or not, they can see or have an affinity to be in places where they experience phenomenon. So it's not easy to just sit here and say, well, I know this or that, because maybe I'm not one of those people, so you can never understand, you never get in the mind of another person, especially if they experience something. So that's why, to me, it's always just a complete open mind while trying to just sort of develop base theories.
And also keep an open mind, but not so open, of course, that your mind falls out, because some people get really way out there and, and it's like, okay, I don't believe that there's that many people being snatched up by Bigfoot. I mean, it's just not, I don't believe that. I mean, sorry. And, Barton, one of the things that I talked to you about now, you were of the opinion that these things were completely metaphysical, but then you met a person, we both did, actually. You met him on my show. You questioned him during that whole live stream of the LBL, and that was amazing stuff that went on. The Cryptid Studies Institute was on board, was on the show, and Jody Cook came on, and there was all this, drama that happened. But Roger claimed to have been a witness of a killing of an Amish family in the LBL. Now, I had always heard of the LBL. The LBL in the north, there's the Dogman, LBL in the south, there's the Bigfoot, and blah, blah, blah. You, Barton, were always of the opinion that it was completely metaphysical, but once Roger told his story of what he saw, then you said, hey, what if this is a physical phenomenon? Now, I don't believe what he saw was the same thing as what I saw. What I saw looked like a werewolf-looking creature with it had a head, like this big. Okay, I mean, it was not a wolf. It wasn't a dog. And I know what I saw. In fact, Linda's book is on my shelf right here next to y'all's books and says I know what I saw. I look at it every day and I know what I saw. Barton, these things, I think, and me and Ryan Tremblay talked about this. We did a show, devil monkeys. I mean, they call them devil monkeys because that's what they look like. I don't know how to describe it. The rebobs up in the Napa Valley in California, people have seen these things. I've gotten one story that somebody had given me of these things that I think is credible. Now, I made a mistake years ago, and when I was doing this other show, somebody sent me a story of an attack by these little creatures. I say little because they're smaller than you would look at as a Bigfoot or a Dogman. And they gave me a story about it, and I kind of dismissed it because I thought this is too fantastical. Well, then later on, Roger comes out, and of course I can't find that person's story because I dumped it, and please forgive me. If you're out there, please send me that story back, and I apologize for that. Okay, I shouldn't have done that. I just didn't. It was just hard to take. It was hard to believe a bunch of teenagers telling me that they were attacked by a pack of monkeys. It's, and it sounds funny. I'm not going to laugh, but it did sound kind of funny because they were vicious monkeys and they were ape-like but they had tails, and I was just going like, this is weird. It's definitely a one-off, but it was, but Barton, if you want to talk about that a little bit about the LBL, the beast of the LBL, the description of it is straight legs. Okay. But the ears are on the side of the head, not up top, which I think is the Dogman. This is, on the side of the head. It looks almost like somebody took a chimp or monkey and bred it with a werewolf. I mean, it's a weird looking creature. And what would you say that is, Barton? I mean, it's your neck of the woods.
Well, I mean, I always thought it was a Dogman. I've been researching that LBL murder case for 15 years. And the initial story was received secondhand from a lady down there. And I went down there to interview her like 15 years ago. And that's how everything got started with all this LBL stuff. But I think that what Rogers saw, and by the way, I 100% believe Rogers telling the truth. I haven't heard one good, sustainable argument against his story. And if I do, I'll certainly admit that. But as of yet, I have heard nothing that can contradict what he's telling us. So I think that they're basically a government experiment with genetics. It's genetically engineered chimera between a human and a dog. So, and that's what you get. And obviously, I believe that that type can be killed, because if not, I wouldn't be down there, with Nightmare trying to kill one. Roger's story gave me hope that we're not all just to be play the role of victims our entire life. We can actually do something to defend ourselves. And you can't take handguns down the LBL, so I take my primitive weapons and try it that way. So I honestly believe that that type is a flesh and blood creature that can be killed.
And there are stories, multiple stories of them actually killing people in the LBL.
So
Neoma Finn. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. The late Johnny Henderson and I sat around one day, and we were counting up all the people that had allegedly been killed in the LBL area, and that's the land between the Lakes State Park in South Central Kentucky. And we come up with 15 people that had been supposedly been killed down there since the 1960s. So that's a lot of people. And, everybody seems to be just content with writing about it and talking about it, but no one, these ex-Marines and ex-cops and ex-whatever, no one seems to be inclined to go do anything about it. And it's really sad that this thing killed 2 kids down there, and no one seems to want to do anything about it. And I had given up hope that anybody could do anything until I heard Roger's story, and I'd already retired from the paranormal. There's just too many lies out there, too many crazy idiots mouthing off, calling names, and just hoaxes, especially the liars. It's just, I can't stand them.
Egos.
And I've already retired from this. Right. I have a good job. I have a good life. I don't need the money, what little money that this brings. I donate to charity. So yeah. I had no dog in this fight. So I'd already retired from it, and was happy just to write one more book about it, which I haven't finished yet, but I'm working on it, and be done with it. But Roger convinced me that, something can actually be done to help people.
And we're going to do that for the podcast. We're going to have him on with Elijah, the late Johnny Henderson, our friend that passed recently. Yeah. He was convinced that they were flesh and blood, but that they were a type of Nephilim. Now, I'm sure you guys, Lyle and Ken, you've heard that term bandied about quite a bit. Neoma Finn says, Josh, can you explain the difference between the devil monkeys and pugwudgies? Pugwudgies are actually what we would call duende, or little monitos there in Spanish. I did a show about it just Friday. I dropped it. Devil monkeys are actually, they look like I said, like a monkey mixed with a werewolf from the reports that I've gotten. D.A. Roberts mentioned earlier, he said that there have been, all throughout history, stories of the cynocephali. And I know you're going by the stories that Marco Polo encountered dog-headed men. I've heard all the stories. I've read all the stories. I don't know what that could be. There's a lot of people that believe that these things are a flesh and blood creature. I lean toward them not being a flesh and blood creature, because it's just like you guys said, Lyle and Ken and Barton, that there's no. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would man and canine be mixed together? I mean, it makes sense that there would be like some sort of, Bigfoot, but I don't really get the whole. So these people that are these real flesh and blood hardcore Dogman people, I got to disagree, because I don't really lean that way. I mean, I'm not trying to pick sides or one way or the other, but if somebody said, hey, you have to choose, that's what I'm going to choose. somebody said a gugwe, mongoloid monster. No, a gugwe is not. I do not believe that that's what that was in the LBL. The descriptions don't fit. The gugwe's a huge hulking type beast. I don't believe that. Or a Genosqua. Those are different types of Sasquatch. I believe there's a bunch of different types of Sasquatch. I've gotten so many different reports of different kinds. But yeah, I don't really. Vault, I see you in the chat. Hey, how you doing? And he's done a lot of work too. All I know is what I saw, to be true. Everyone else could say whatever they want to say, and we just have to go along with and take their word for it. I have a question for you, Ken. I know you're a big flesh and blood person when it comes to the Bigfoot.
I'm made out of flesh and blood too.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm all in.
So have you heard of the Genosqua? Do you know what that is?
I don't think I've heard of that one. No.
Okay. You need to go listen to a Whisper to a Scream podcast that I did with Ryan Tremblay. I'm giving you homework. Go get on it. You'll learn. Okay. So anyway, moving on. I'm just kidding, Ken. What it is they call them the stone giants. And I got a report from a very close person that's very close to me. Their brother claims to have seen this gigantic looking, it was more like a type of, almost like an early human looking with the brow ridge and all this. And they saw this in the redwood forest up in California, and they said it looked like a giant. And I was like, oh, like a Bigfoot? No, not like a Bigfoot. It was hairy, like we're hairy, not fur, but it looked more like a prehistoric person that was just gigantic. Now there have been stories of these things, and what they would do is they would cover themselves in sap. They had the intelligence to do that, and they would put rocks on themselves to become impervious to the primitive weapons that were used by the natives, back in the day, and it would probably work, and they were cannibalistic. And I know you've heard all the stories of cannibal giants, and a lot of people will argue with me, well, Bigfoot eats people. I don't have any proof of that either. I mean, if that's what you believe, that's fine, but I've never heard of a story, I've never gotten one anyway, of them chewing on somebody, like trying to eat them. But these supposedly were stories of these giants, and we talk about that on Ryan's podcast. But I was just wondering what your opinions are about the Nephilim and giants, and what do you think? Is there any plausibility to that, Ken, at all?
Well, and again, we're talking about kind of cherry picking stories and traditions. So one tradition can say this, but I mean, to me, if the big picture is, no, it wasn't a Bigfoot. It was a big primitive looking thing with hair and a brow ridge I was like, well, that's a Bigfoot. So, I mean, there's just different people have different perceptions.
Well, it was like 10 feet tall. That's the difference.
Well, okay. So I'll make an argument against that.
Yeah.
In my own opinion, Bigfoot, Sasquatch that we know of, the flesh and blood version, could not possibly be taller than 9 feet. I think once you start talking about these 10, 12, 15 foot hominids, how is something like that going to hide? A, and B, it no longer becomes an adaptation that's a benefit. In other words, all species on this planet evolve different characteristics that help us to survive. So size can be an advantage, except when you get so big that it's even hard to move around in your environment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and also you could look at physically structural things, and I'm not an anatomist, but I mean, the tallest humans that ever lived, guys like Robert Wadlow, he died when he was in his early 20s because he couldn't walk, and he got an infection in his foot because he couldn't feel. So it's like, we're not built, hominins, bipeds are not designed to be, 9, 10, 11, taller than 9 feet. So I think 9 foot is my tallest male Sasquatch. I think the females are smaller.
What if it's gigantism? As far as
like biblical thing, I'm sorry?
What if it's gigantism amongst the Bigfoot?
Well, that's a good point, Josh. That's the other thing I was going to say, is that generally speaking, you can apply pretty much the same characteristics to any species. But as you point out, there are exceptional individuals within every species. So we do have giant humans occasionally. We could have a rare giant Sasquatch. Genetically, I don't know what the odds of that being. Now, in terms of tying this stuff to the Bible, that's not me. I'm not the guy for that. I'm an agnostic. I'm an agnostic, so I haven't studied the Bible. I've heard of the concept of Nephilim, but one could easily make an argument that those beliefs are based on people that already have an attachment to the Bible and that particular belief system. And so the Nephilim fits within their paradigm. Again, confirmation bias. We can't deny it. Every human on the planet has our own opinions, and the older we get, the more set we get, darn it, in our opinions. But trust me, I'm speaking, right. I'm becoming like Clint Eastwood from the Get Off My Lawn guy. But seriously. So anyways, I'm kind of rambling on, and I want to give Barton and Lyle a chance to respond. But no, I don't advocate these biblical giants that live in caves and eat people and stuff. I think, maybe you get once in a while, you get a pissed off Bigfoot or something, who knows?
What do you think, Lyle?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, I don't have any real world evidence or interviews to suggest that there's these humongous giants. And then, I don't read the Bible either. I'm not religious whatsoever, and don't connect this phenomenon with that. I mean, I just still go back to hunting with my father in the woods, and we're looking for elusive creatures that are out there, and whether they're flesh and blood or not. But it's jumping off into Bible stories and stuff that it's just not my expertise, nor do I ponder it.
The point of that was that there are stories even in the Bible itself, and I'm not talking about just the Bible. They're in every religious text. Every religious text has stories of them. It doesn't matter whether you're of the Abrahamic faith or if you're Hindu. They all talk about there being giants. Now I know the Hindus, and I'm not going to get into a whole dissertation on the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, but if you go back and you read the yugas, it talks about the beginning, which is the Satra Yuga. Then there's a Tetra Yuga, the Dwarpa Yuga, which was the flood. Now there's archaeological evidence of that, but we are living in the time of the Kali Yuga, which is the destruction, the age of destruction. It talks about there are beings that were around that were extremely tall, they were really big, and that they were, and so maybe, what if this is just the memory we have, our ancestors, of being around these Bigfoot type creatures that were just terrifying, and they could, there might be times of famine and whatever, they could snatch up a human and eat us pretty easily. So they did. I mean, what I was going to say earlier about how the phenomena started with the witch, the Bell Witch. It started with a hairy beast in the field, and then that whole phenomena touched off. So John Bell, I believe he was hunting for a rabbit, and he saw this hairy creature. Why they would need, if they came from another dimension and into ours, why they would need fur could be whatever they were, wherever they were from. It was cold. I mean, and if there are portals, which our science, which is very incomplete, says that there are, what if they just found a way to come through and they just, where they're from, it's just as cold as it is here or whatever, so they have fur. I mean,
wait. So interject, Josh. Science says there are portals.
Well, if you look at the,
you want to reword that?
If you look at the string theory, if you look at the dimensions, we have to have a way to go there. Now I'm gonna teach you something, Ken. Now I know you're like, get off your lawn guy, but here we go. I went to school here. In order for one species to travel, like, there's no way to do it through rocket propulsion. We already know that. But if you folded time and space, sounds like, oh my gosh, really hard to do. Well, not really. What they do is they close it and then they come across. Now, the ancient Sumerian tablets say that there were people that were really tall. They even have pictographs of a person like this and then a little person like that, and those little people are us, supposedly, according to the Sumerian tablets. Now, I know that I was going to say, I know it wasn't you two. I had a long conversation with Redfern one day about the Sitchin and his work, and Eric Von Daniken, and I'm friends with Paul Anthony Wallace, a good friend of mine, and we talk. And so we talk Bible theology and the different, the Sumerian tablets and all that. And I have a very different, very unique flavor on what I believe religious-wise. And I don't even call it religion. I would just call it like a biblical science. But because the translations aren't even correct. We're going to get into that, folks, in a couple episodes. So anyways, you got these giants. Now, they if they traveled through a Stargate, okay, they would have to go through a portal. quantum physics tells us that that is possible, that you would go through a wormhole type, I believe that that's what CERN is doing. I believe that they've figured out a way to do it. And I think that it's not really magic. When you're dealing with magic, I think magic and science are eventually going to be one and the same. We're going to figure out that what looks like magic to us, it's like, wow, that's magic. It's really science. If you were a bunch of islanders, and you were running around in loincloths and you see a plane go overhead, that's a Thunderbird. You're going to throw spears at it and be like, we're going to bring down that horrible creature. It's making noise and it's terrifying us. To them, that's magic. To us, we're just flying Pan Am Airlines. You know what I mean? It's like we could be in that plane. You could be going to a conference, Ken, and you're in that plane, and there are people like, hey, look at that, and they're throwing spears at you. They're not going to hit you because you're in the magical flying Thunderbird. And I believe that at some point it's going to come out like completely. It's going to be mainstream. It has to be. Because the theories that there are different dimensions, there's a connection to each of these dimensions. Not only that, but I believe in the multiverse, which gets even more complicated and complex, that in this universe alone, there are 11 dimensions, but then in the multiverse, there's copies of our world. And Linda Moulton Howe, she talked about how our universe was a spinoff from another universe. Now, in the Kabbalah, the book of mysticism for the Jewish faith, they believe, and I've read this, they said that, me and David Weatherly got into it a little bit on the show. We talked about it a little bit. They believe that what we consider to be demons, which me and you, Barton, have talked about, these things being possible demons or whatever, what they are fragmented beings from a compressed universe, and that they spun off into our universe. What if we were all just sitting here talking, and then suddenly there was a cataclysm, and we were just compressed immediately? And if you believe in a soul, you still feel like, hey, I'm Barton Nunley, or I'm Ken Gerhardt, or Lyle Blackburn, but you're shot off into another world, and in the process, you end up melding with a donkey and a wolf. That's why all these demons look like all these weird looking things. That's how they explain it in the Kabbalah. It's kind of like, that's what happened. Now, the Hadith is also very esoteric, and it's of the Muslim faith. And then you have stories of the Epic of Gilgamesh. I believe in the Epic of Gilgamesh, they talk about a Bigfoot creature. There's a hairy man, Gilgamesh's friend,
Indiku.
Yeah.
Indiku.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Thank you for interrupting me, Ken. That's okay. I'll let it pass. Anyways, you're right. but there's a story of that. Now, I believe also that a lot of the Old Testament, though, borrowed heavily from the Epic of Gilgamesh. There was a flood, blah, 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 blah. And of course, I've argued with people, I was arguing with somebody the other day, and they were like, we were talking about the Exodus, and I was telling them my take on that. And people don't always like it when they hear the truth or what I believe is the truth, because it's doesn't fit into their little paradigm of their religious belief. But if if you're going to close yourself off to all these other theories, I mean, in order to confirm or deny your religion, your religious beliefs, I strongly suggest that you go and you read the other religions. I've read the Quran, I've read the Hadith, I've read the Gita, and I've read all these the different types of Buddhism, and so in order to confirm or deny your own religious belief, you should do yourself a favor and read the other religions. People get trapped into the whole, well, this is my religious belief, and I don't adhere to any of that, so I'm not going to read it at all because that's just right out, because the God I worship will destroy me if I read that. Well, that's a problem, because if you're not going to be open-minded and understand everything else, then you're kind of stuck in the in the slow lane, and that's it. I can tell you right now, I believe, and what you believe in is, Ken, is partly what you believe, and I believe in what you believe, Lyle, but I also believe what you believe, Barton. I think everybody's reality is their own, and I believe that Ken is mostly wrong, but a little bit right. Lyle is pretty right, and Barton is completely right. That's kind of what I believe right now, just so you know. Ken's looking at me.
You're getting picked on me. That's
I'm messing with you, Ken. I'm messing. I love you. So the thing is, to wrap it all together, to put a bow on what I just said is basically like there is a in every religion, every religious book, or you can find something about these creatures. And in the religion, the Islamic religion, they're called jinn, and then they come from the Green Mountains, called the Kaf. one of the things I looked into when I was young, I thought, this is odd. Where are there green mountains? Where are there green? Oh, wait, Venus. I mean, if they're a spiritual creature, they could, theoretically live in another planet, and they could just come through a portal. I mean, and it wouldn't be that hard, because according to the science of quantum physics, it is possible. It is possible. And according to what quantum physics also tells you, that we are running parallel to different worlds. Like right now, there's another Josh Turner and a Ken Gerhardt and a Lyle and a Barton. They're doing a show, and they're probably doing way better than we are. But they're, but and you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the theory.
Yeah, but it's just, Josh, it's a theory, and it could be, but it's an untestable theory. So you can say it's possible, but is it probable? You can't prove it. You can't present. Well, you believe, but that's not based on evidence. That's just
what
your
is the
feeling.
Mandela effect? What is the Mandela
What does that have
effect?
to do with confusing belief with looking at evidence and saying, okay, it's the most likely
I believe
thing.
the Mandela effect is actually proof to me that we are, that there is something happening, that we have jumped timelines, things like that. I had a guy who was an astrophysicist. He was retired. He was working in Roswell. I started corresponding with him, and I said something to him that maybe woke him up. I don't know. But I told him, I said, do you realize that we were once in Orion's Spur and now in the arm of Sagittarius? It was like a light switch turned on in his head, and he started kind of, my wife was there, Scorpion, my friend was there. I had a couple people with us, and he was like pondering that. Now, this guy is a retired astrophysicist. I corresponded with him for a long time. I do believe he may have passed. We don't talk, like, just kind of communication just ended. And then I got some text from his, I think, daughter. But anyways, that's not important. What's important, though, is that this man and me talked for 4 or 5 years. And one of the things that he said, it just shocked him when I said that. That is one of the beliefs in the Mandela effect. And I've had my own run-in with the Mandela effect. And I believe that there are people who are born with, that they can see through the veil. And it's called ojo dotado. And when I was born, my abuelita said this child has the veil, and it's not like you're special like the Lion King. Oh, look, it's just one in a few children in Mexican culture are born with ojo dotado, the gift of the eye. It means that you can see all kinds of scary, weird things that you don't understand and can't explain, and it messes with you until you get older. Then you're like, what is all this? What happens is these people have multiple encounters with cryptids or ghosts, whatever, and it tends to be people who were told from when they were little that they had the ojo. I don't think that's a coincidence, and I think that we do a disservice when we say, and I've only had one cryptid encounter that I can say, if you count Dogman as a cryptid now, but I've only had that one. Like, everything else was on a spiritual level. But my argument is, what if it's all on a spiritual level? And what if we are the people that see these things are able to see into the fourth dimension? They're able to see through the veil, and that's why they're able to see Dogman and Bigfoot multiple times in their lives. Barton, you could be one of those people, because the things, when we have talked, Barton, at length, a lot of the stories that you've told me, you have never wavered and changed. Now, when I interview anybody that's been on my show, will tell you this. When I talk to them, I'll ask them the same story to tell me over and over again. It'll be about 3 times. And they will have to tell that story over and over again, because I have to really know that this person is telling the truth. So either they've really, really rehearsed this, or they're telling the truth. Now, Barton, every time I've talked to you, you've never added another piece. You've never taken away from your story. It's always been the same story. You've always told me these stories, and they are the same. They don't change. Now, that was the case with Roger, too. I told you this, and I told Jody this. We're opposite sides of it. I said, whatever Roger's saying, he believes it himself. Like, he absolutely believes his story. Now, that could be the case, too. The people just believe it, Some people could suffer from Fantastica. That's a real thing. And they could just be seeing these things because they believe it. It's a belief thing. But I think a lot of these people, though, I think that they're seeing Bigfoot and Dogman and different things because they're able to see through the veil. I know that's my situation.
Let me just address that for a second.
Go ahead, Barton.
Josh. So, has anyone here ever seen a portal? First of all.
No, I have not.
Okay, I have. Now, I just thought it was a vision. You know, my family was living in the same place that the Spotsville Monster incidents occurred, and I just thought it was a vision. But a few years ago, I was talking to Linda Godfrey, and she said, "Bart, you know what you saw was probably a portal." And I
Hey,
just got
Barton,
to
put the
thinking
mic a
about
little closer to your mouth. Just push.
it.
I think it
I was
it
close.
moves, doesn't it?
How about, can you hear me now?
Yeah, just just trying
At
to
all?
make sure. Yeah, I got
So
you.
we were driving down the road, and we're coming back from town, and driving back toward the house, and I just happened to look up in the sky, and there was this big cloud bank. I know it sounds fantastic, but it's honest to God's truth. And right in the middle of the cloud bank just opened up and formed a circular hole right there in the cloud. And what I saw inside that hole was a castle. And it was so clear. I could see every stone that was used to make that castle. I could see the doors, you know, like wooden doors, with iron work, you know, gilded with iron. And they had turrets and spires with a long red pennant flying off of each spire. So, but I always thought that was just a vision. But Linda convinced me that was probably a portal. And the reason I believe it was because the guy that, our neighbor, he saw these things stepping in and out of portals on 3 different occasions. And he never had any idea what a portal was, or even what a Bigfoot was, or Dogman. This is back in 1975. But he said it was just areas, a small area that looked like heat waves rising off of a summer road. And suddenly one of these things stepped out and appeared. And when it went back in, it stepped back into these heat waves zone and disappeared. So, and you know, as far as string theory and parallel multiple universes go, I'm like Ken, I don't know anything about quantum physics, nothing. I'm not sure I even go in for that idea. I think it's, in my philosophy, there are only 2 dimensions that really concern us as human beings, and that's the physical dimension and the spiritual one. And if we can wrap our minds and try to understand both of those dimensions, then we'll be a lot closer to understanding what's really going on, instead of trying to overlay an infinite amount of universes and possibilities. Strange as it may seem, I like to use Occam's razor as much as I can. The simplest answer is probably the truth. And I don't know why all these intellects don't use that with Bigfoot. So the simplest answer to thousands of Bigfoot sightings is people are telling the truth. It's not that there's thousands of liars, thousands of profiteers, thousands of pretenders, or tens of thousands, as the case may be. The simplest answer is they're seeing something and telling the truth about it. So that's where I stand on that. But there's nothing special about me, Josh. I'm not psychic. I wasn't born with a call. I wasn't nothing psychic happened to me in my entire life. I think it's just, in my case, it's more of where I was born and lived my life.
Kentucky is a very weird spot. Yeah,
it's what they call a window area in the paranormal, and I was born and raised right in there. And I've had multiple cryptid sightings, and multiple UFO sightings. I've lived in 3 haunted houses, and as a matter of fact, every single one of my cryptid sightings happened to me while I was residing in a haunted house. Now, if there's no connection between those things, then how could that be possible? You think, well, what's the odds of seeing a Bigfoot? Pretty slim, right? What are the odds then of seeing a Bigfoot and a UFO in the same area? Have to be astronomically slim. So what are the odds of seeing a Bigfoot, a UFO in the same area, a Black Panther, and a wolf-like creature, all while living in a haunted house? Well, the odds would seem to be impossible. It shouldn't be possible, but yet it's happened to me 3 different times. So however you want to explain that, or I don't know. But I know that I'm not psychic, and there's nothing special about me. I'm just an average guy. You know, if I was psychic, I would hit the lottery.
Well, psychic is something completely different. That's not.
Well, I'm just saying,
through
there's
the
nothing
veil
special.
is not being psychic. Yeah.
Well, I can't.
And you're
see
really not
through
that
any veils.
special in Mexican culture. It's like every 4th child has it. So it's not like, or
Right.
I think 8th child or something.
So I don't think I'm special at all. It's just a matter of where I was born and raised. So either lucky or unlucky, however you want to look at it. But that's the way I see that.
And Lyle, what do you think? Do you think that the portal theory holds any water?
I suppose it holds as much water as other theories. I mean, once we go beyond just some basic science of here's the evidence, what do we extrapolate out of that? So you go above that, and then that is as good of an answer as any, and maybe a better answer, actually, because then that really explains why we can't find the bodies, or we the footprints disappear. There's 20 footprints and then they ended, which in some cases that indicates a hoax. And in some cases where it's been examined and you rule out a hoax, well, how do you explain that? So, but, and of course it just becomes, to me, just speculation. I mean, I just like going in the woods and hunting for monsters and interviewing people who say they saw monsters. So quantum physics and all that, it's like, sounds like,
a million miles away.
Yeah, it begins to, certainly good things to ponder in the scheme of the universe, but it's like, I just all I know is people see monsters.
That's right.
And I like, even interviewing somebody like Bart is an amazing thing, because he's had experiences. And when I come away from it, go, okay, Bart's a very credible person. Now we have all this. These are amazing stories. And, it's like, wow, I'm jealous. You lived in a haunted house. I mean,
that's not something to be jealous of.
No, definitely not.
In a childish way. But on the other hand, like we say, you're either unlucky or lucky, or makes you more likely unlucky. So you may, no matter how we look at that, it's affecting people in real life. And that's also what I like to look at, not only the phenomenon, people see monsters, but how does it affect a person and even whole towns? Like, look at Point Pleasant, West Virginia. There's a giant Mothman festival because some people saw this, unexplainable flying thing in the woods. That to me is just a mind-blowing thing, and just, the phenomenon thereof. So, I don't typically ponder quantum physics, or even I'm not really well versed enough to give you a really good answer, honestly.
I don't go out into the woods because I don't want to disappear. Okay. I just won't do it. I won't do it. I'm just,
and see, that's, my dad just
terrified of getting snatched up and taken to another dimension.
I was 6 or 7 years old. My dad would just throw me behind some, he would have a tree stand. I just was on the ground and he'd just leave me. And he was like, I'll be back before dark. Well, it was always darn near dark. And I was out there a lot of times scared. And back then, my dad didn't believe in GPS. He doesn't believe in compasses. He's never used that kind of stuff ever. We got lost sometimes. I remember chasing, he had to carry me. I was so young. He had, winged a deer, and we're hunting the blood and trying to track it so much. I was so young, I had to carry me. So I've never been afraid of the woods. If I had the opportunity to go to LBL with Bart and wield weapons to chase the creature, I'm all for it.
You're going to get bit by spiders, snakes, and ticks.
Well,
that's what you have to worry about. But
that's worse than the creatures. But I'm all in for woods and hunt monsters.
We guys right here, okay, and maybe a couple of our colleagues. We need to go. Okay, go to Honey Island. I mean, you guys have been already. And we go back. We go to LBL. Then we go up to these different locations, and we try to find something. I mean, that's all you can do. And I think it would be a great idea. I think we would it'd be a big hit, because I would actually be back at the hotel, like I said before, just kind of monitoring y'all. I'll give you tracking devices, and I'll watch the little, I'll make sure that you're doing, and my face will be mostly what's seen. Mostly it would be me, but you guys would be like green dots, and if you go red, you got taken into a portal by a Bigfoot. Sorry, thanks for playing.
Anytime you guys want to come up to Kentucky and go exploring places like LBL and Spotsville, just let me know and we'll make it happen.
We should.
We'll open invitations for all of you guys.
Yeah.
I think that
you'll get up here and probably get scared. So I'm not responsible for anything that happens, but I will take you to where Bigfoot lives.
I was about to say, what's the waiver like there?
Right. I will take you right to where Bigfoot lives, and, you can see what happens from there.
There you go, Ken. You got it. He'll take you right to Bigfoot's door. He'll be like there. Ken, I want to thank you for something you did for me, and I want to say it on air. That your friend, the police officer from San Antonio, great guy.
Eddie Hill.
Yeah, Eddie Hill. He's a great guy, and I was going to say he's got his group, and we're going to do some work together. I actually really thank you for introducing me to him because he's a big Dogman guy. I'm going to say something. When my grandfather, when we were up in the Chinati Mountains going to Candelaria from Marfa, my grandfather lived out there. Okay. And I was a little kid, and I was all enthralled by the Marfa lights. I wanted to see the Marfa lights, and my grandpa was like, "There's nothing there. They're just headlights from the other road, and you're so stupid. You believe it's stupid what these hippies are saying. You're so stupid, blah, blah, blah. But I'll take you, you know." And my grandfather believed in nothing, absolutely nothing. He took me to the McDonald Observatory because I was always really interested in space. And I was like, there's aliens. And my grandpa was like, "Bull crap. There's not aliens. Those are helicopters, and people see them, and blah, blah, blah. UFOs don't exist." Okay. I'm going to tell you something, though, okay? He's a crotchety old man, ex-World War II, been wounded in World War II, had all kinds of scars, had been in a bar fight, got cut up. Didn't believe in anything, right? He tells me in Candelaria that there's a cemetery up there where the coyotes run around on two legs. Told me that. I was probably 8 years old, or 9 maybe, and I asked one of the little kids that I was playing with, this other little boy, you know, and he said, "Yeah." He said, "They're up there. They're these, and they look like they're little dogmen. That's what they are." I mean, when I started doing a little research into it as I got older, years later, they're only about 4 foot tall. They're like pint-sized little dogmen. And until Linda's book, I read one of her books where she talks about the half-pint trail runner. That's what it was called. I read it and I thought, this is amazing. That's when I first tried to correspond with her. You know, and then of course I went and ended up going another direction to the dark side. But anyways, I should have stuck with Linda. But she had this book, you know, and it's talked about this little dog man that ran out in front of these people. And my grandfather, he said he would see them run across the road in Pinto Canyon. He would drive through there, and I was like, "That's normal to you for a coyote to go running across the road on two legs, especially a little pack of them?" He said, "Oh yeah, that's just what they do. They just run around on two legs." Now I believe 100% that is some sort of weird phenomenon. I think it's a natural phenomenon too. I don't think they were spirits, and I think that he was seeing them, and he just assumed, like everything else, that was just a normal thing. That these coyotes up in that canyon knew how to run around on two legs. And now, you know, I've never seen Bigfoot, you know, and I know that Barton, you're probably the only one on the panel who has. Okay. I don't discredit you guys' research because you haven't seen one. And somebody commented one day, you know, taking a jab at Ken and Nick, whoever was in that thread. And of course I wasn't in that group anymore because I left because of that individual, but my people kind of got into it with this person. And they were like, "Well, you've been doing this for so many years and you haven't seen one, blah, blah, blah." What does that matter? The point, of your research is that you're out there looking for it and you're talking to witnesses. There's a ton of people out there who have not seen these things, who have not witnessed these things. They weren't lucky enough, as Lyle said, to live in a haunted house like me and Bart, you know. But it wasn't all fun, you know, dancing and toothbrushes. It was bad. Fun. It was bad things that happened. But these people will say, "Well, you didn't see this, you didn't see that." You don't have to be able to see this stuff to document it and write it down and do years and years of solid research on it for it to be a legitimate thing. And Lyle,
you may then be a more neutral party if you haven't actually.
Absolutely. You're not skewed by what you've seen because your experiences are taking you out of, you know. So I got a question for you, Lyle. And this is your work on the beast, the Boggy Creek beast, right? Were there ever any reports of it being anything other than flesh and blood at all?
I was trying to think about that when we brought this topic up, and I can't think of any that I've either personally researched or looked into that subscribed anything to it that couldn't be explained by natural characteristics or abilities. No, it's just simply, this dates back to 1908. So is roughly around in that very specific area, the first report I have. And of course, those are sketchier in details as you go forward and more recent times, obviously you can then talk to a firsthand witness, but none of those. I mean, there's some weird stuff. I mean, just it's weird to see something that people say doesn't exist anyway, but at no time did anybody say it did anything that I would classify as paranormal Bigfoot, if you will. And let me add to that is I may have seen a creature, but I can't definitively say that I have. So it wasn't a clear enough sighting for me to to go around saying I've seen one. I don't want to jump to that conclusion. So it's a possible, and other things have happened, such as things stalking us in the woods, howling, me chasing something 2 times without being able to get it in my flashlight at night. But that's my, in that experience, a lot of those happened in Boggy Creek, where I've been more times than other places.
And your book, Sinister Swamps, The Beasts of Boggy Creek, all these different books you've written, very good books. Ken, The Essential Guide to
Excellent
Bigfoot,
books.
excellent work, gentlemen, on all the things you've done.
Thank you.
And Barton, of course, obviously your book Inhumanoids was amazing. It was an amazing book.
Thanks,
Influenced
appreciate
me to actually go deeper into this phenomena and all the work that you guys have done. And when somebody got on that thread and they just tried to discredit you guys, my wife just went nuclear. She was like, "Oh my God, they're attacking Ken." I was like, okay, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
I wasn't in the group, but my people, went in and said, "Hey, this isn't correct." I don't think that anybody can look at any 3 of you guys, and I'll throw David Weatherly and Nick Redfern in there too, along with Linda Godfrey, amongst others. I just can't name everybody, but like there's you guys have done excellent work in this field, and I think that the cryptozoological field would be the poorer if you guys weren't a part of it and you weren't able to do what you've done. And I appreciate and applaud all the hard work. And I want to say something else before we leave here.
Thanks,
I'm about
brother.
to leave here. I'm taking my glasses off for this. I'm just kidding. Anyway, these guys aren't getting rich off of writing books. I'm so sick of everybody thinking that, they're like, "Oh yeah, you got that podcast, you're making all that money. Oh, they got that money." And, I'm like, I wish, and I have a job, that I have to do. And like when I leave here, I got to go check on 12 different places here in Austin. If you know anything about Austin, it really sucks going north to south. It takes forever. So it's not a fun, it's not all happiness or whatever. But Ken, is always working. Redfern, always working. I mean, I'm talking like 8-9 hours a day. That man is writing. You know that. We talked to him the other day, Barton, and Redfern, 8-9 hours a day. Lyle, constantly working. He's got tons of enterprises. He's got a great band. It's called Ghoultown. I love it. I actually have it on my playlist. I listen to that Drink with the Living Dead like every day, to the point where somebody gets in my truck, they're like, "Dude, you love this song." I really do. That song rocks.
Great song.
It's awesome, dude. It's a great song. And I consider you guys my friends, and I've never been, when we talk, guys, I want people to know this. We don't just call each other up and go, "Hey, let's all just agree on something." Blah, blah, blah. No, we argue all the time. Ken's a horrible Packers fan. I forgive him, and I'm okay with that. And I know that he's got that problem, and I've tried to help him, with that. And everybody just pray. That's all you can do. But he's a very hardworking guy, and we're not getting rich off of this. Barton's got a company. He goes and paints, and so people have this idea that we're all just over here getting rich, because you've been on TV and blah, blah, blah. That doesn't make you rich, okay? I can tell you they don't pay you a lot of times just to go on TV, okay?
TV doesn't want to pay you anything.
Yeah, that's like
crazy.
The worst paying job ever.
Crazy.
Yes.
I can't deny it. I got a lot from mine because I was
Wow.
pretty forceful. But I'm just kidding. They gave me, I think, some snacks or something, and was like, "Here you go. You can go to the, get a sandwich."
Oh, you got snacks?
Yeah, they gave me
Wow.
some pretzels and a sandwich. So here you go. Tell your story, fatty. No, but the point is that your guys aren't getting rich, and guys, if you do buy books, buy them from people who are credible. I was looking at, I'm not going to get into it, the other day, and I saw this book, and I'm going like, this dude, he gives me a headache when I see his. I'm not even going to get into who he is. It'd be terrible to say that, but y'all guys here do amazing work. You do, you know, and that's why I promote you guys. And it started out just me, you know, wanting the books to give to my listeners because I wanted them to have books from great authors, from people who knew what the heck they were talking about, you know, and not somebody who can't spell or use punctuation. I mean, you know, and so that's what I wanted. And you guys have been more than gracious in an exchange and flow of information. We've talked about all these things. And I appreciate you coming on tonight. And we have hit the 2-hour mark just about. Ken's got to go watch the Ravens play the Colts. I think he's got a big money that he's made selling books on that game. So, you know, but anyways, yeah, you guys appreciate you coming on. And Lyle, dude, keep rocking it, dude. You and Barton, you know, me and you become best buds. And you got that. I see you destroyed my shirt there. I forgive you.
No, I just made it mine, brother. My shirt.
That's awesome.
Thanks, man.
Can I just point out that Lyle and I didn't even plan this, but we're both wearing shirts that represent John Carpenter movies, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the you got the thing on? Oh,
the
yeah.
Thing.
Yes, that's right.
And he's got Halloween. So
I just had this.
Lyle and I, even when we don't plan it,
right.
we're gonna always look the same. So it's just we can't help it.
Real quick, you guys are going to be at the next conference. Is it Jefferson? Is that the next conference?
I'll be at the Texas Bigfoot Conference in Jefferson this coming weekend. Yeah.
And you, Ken, are you going?
I'll be at Dead Convention in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Okay.
With Danny Trejo.
Danny Trejo. Actually, my buddy of mine knows him. He used to hang out at Darwin's. Danny Trejo.
That doesn't surprise me. I won't be hanging out with Danny Trejo. That was a little bit of a.
He'll be there though.
He'll be in the same building as me. Yeah, in the same
I met him. I met him once.
Oh, really?
Did you really?
He's super nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I have a picture with him, but I'll be at the Memphis Bigfoot Conference on October the 30th. So we'll be in Tennessee. So
cool.
The last thing I want to say before we get out of here, guys, and this is important. David Weatherly, who couldn't be here tonight, he asked, and I'm going to tell you really quickly, folks, what he's doing, why he wasn't here. Okay. You know, he's a prolific writer too. And so Weatherly,
and he's got a new book out about the black-eyed kids.
Yeah. So David told me the other day.
I was really wanting to ask him about that.
Somebody called him up and they said, "Hey, we want to interview you about your new book." He's like, "Which one?" He goes, "The Black-Eyed Kids." He's like, "You mean the 11-year-old book?" That's because you haven't read it, obviously. So David sent me a message, and I asked him at the 11th hour, so I don't hold it against him. He's a good friend. And I said, "You going to be there tonight with us, David?" He said, "Apologies, man, I can't make it. I have, ironically, finally landed an interesting guy in his 70s who saw a werewolf." That's literally what he said to me. And then so he says, "Maybe Nick and I can do a show at some point. October's just crazy, you know that." And I said, "Yeah, okay." And he's like, "Driving out to see him now. Only time will tell he will, or only time he'll speak with me." So this is the only chance he had to do it. And I said, "Dude, go and do what you got to do. I'll let the listeners know that is what Weatherly is doing." Redfern couldn't make it because he's got his book he wrote. He's a prolific author, 67, 68 books, and now he's doing that. So everybody had something going on. I appreciate you guys coming on. And the other day when I was talking to Weatherly, right after I got the phone with you, Lyle, Dogman Conference. We got to do a Dogman Conference. Now, I would like to make it a Dogman, Bigfoot, whatever, cryptid conference. I would just say, hey, a Paranormal Round Table sponsored cryptid conference. Now, me and Ken, we were trying to do something like that back in 2020. And then a little thing called COVID happened, and boom, we had no idea that it was going to change our entire world. But we were looking into it. Now, we're looking at trying to find a central place. I would like to do two. I would like to do one at that central place. If it works out, then I'd like to do it in your neck of the woods, Lyle, because it's in North Texas. We're central, and it's in Fort Worth. Fort Worth and San Antonio actually are my two favorite cities. But anyway, yeah, so that's what we're looking at, a Dogman Cryptid Conference, Paranormal Round Table, and get everybody together. Maybe when the season slows down and we can all get together and we can scratch our heads, we'll get that done. And we'll have everybody come and speak, and everyone can be handed fruit to throw at the people that are talking that you don't like, because I got to make it fun. It's got to be fun, right? So anyways, I appreciate you coming on. Ken, Barton, Lyle, always a great time. I really had fun. And this is something that has been a long time coming.
Well, thank you for all the promotion and discussions and putting stuff like this together, and even being forethought about a conference, because all of that takes a lot of work and on top of what you do. But yeah, I mean, we appreciate everything. Obviously, the cool action figures, and just including us in giving us a venue where we can just talk about this stuff, because that's what we do, what we love to do. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, and you
Yes,
guys are
thank
very
you, Josh.
gracious with your fans.
Absolutely.
Thank you for everything you do, Josh, and thank you for your integrity, sir. We may disagree on a lot of things, but that's one of the things that I really respect about you. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people peppered throughout the field that maybe don't have the level of integrity that we really need to explore all of these great mysteries.
Yeah, and even though we disagree,
Right.
we razz each other all the time. Me and Ken used to see the text, but I mean, Ken is not a person who's gonna, you don't agree with me? Well, it's time. It's WWE time. No, he doesn't do that.
No, string theory, the Dallas Cowboys making the Super Bowl. These are all unprovable, untestable theories
Gosh.
probably could never.
I think they won a game, though.
I sure do. I think they did.
Attention, I think they won.
I think they blew somebody out yesterday. Ken, last thing he said to me on the phone, he said, "Go Giants." He tried to hang up, but I got you. I said, "Go Cowboys" before you got off. So,
yeah.
All right, gentlemen. I'm going to let y'all go, man. I appreciate it. Everybody who tuned in today to watch the show, thank you very much. From Paranormal Round Table, from Josh Turner, Lyle Blackburn, Barton Nunley, Ken Gerhard, good night.